So this is going to be a long single take video. We're about to have a hailstorm, and this is so I can compare my garden to the video taken during Hurricane Harvey last year. So a lot of things had just been planted the winter before Hurricane Harvey, and some of these were planted this spring, but these are all very new plants. So it's a study essentially of what works well in Houston under rather extreme conditions. So the Hurricane Harvey plants were then subjected to a freeze and then a freezing rain where the water falls from the sky super cool and freezes on everything, followed by a radiational freeze down to 18. Some, in this area especially, were protected by lights with sheets over them for the radiational portion of the freeze, and then all the further reaches of the garden, they may or may not have even had a blanket or a pot over them. So I was surprised how well some of them did. These Chinese palms were in the garage. Also, a number of plants that could go in the garage. And these heliconias were $1 each at Lowe's. They are a zone 10, but I was starting to collect heliconias. So there is a heliconia rostrata, the big giant leaves in front, closest in front. And Paul saw one in Colombia and really liked it, and so all he has to do is mention something and I will set about trying to grow it. It will need protection if I ever, and it takes 2 years to bloom, so if I'm ever gone for any freeze, it will not bloom, and if I'm gone for a really hard freeze, that'll be the end of it. The rest of it's counted. It's been kept very thinned. We've had about a month with almost no sun, so I cut back a lot of the plants to let the understory get some light. Those are my little cloned blue bamboo that are now, whatever, 12 feet tall or something like that. That's a 10-foot fence, I believe. Everything's a little sparse because of no sun and because I threw a party and pruned everything to look pretty. Okay. There, home at last. The Japanese bloodgrass, it finally found a place it likes, and I transplanted it. It survived the transplant. Some blooms to show on the toad lily. I don't think they were there last year. The crispix willow hasn't had that as much growth as you would expect, actually, but it's limping along. And some of these trees I kept artificially pruned way, way back. And that hummingbird tree I will probably get rid of. If it freezes, it's dead, and I'm not going to keep it. Copper plant new this year. We'll see how it handles the freezes. But some of it's in that pot. The pot has to come in because it has a guava in it, so it will be protected from hard freezes. And a very rare spiral ginger, a silver spiral ginger. The variegated, which was available nowhere in the U.S. for a while, but is pretty easily available now. And regular species spiral ginger. Thank goodness, the gold dust plant, I finally found a place it likes, and of course it handles the cold beautifully. There was shell ginger, butterfly ginger last year, 1 pot of it. Now there's 3 pots and 3 plantings worth, and there'll be even more. It propagates really well, and it blooms really wonderfully. It smells great. Love this stuff. Eventually I'll be giving some away, so those of you in Houston can look forward to that. So these are all the things we looked at last year. And lots of new things. I've gotten super in. Somebody gave me a bunch of free amaryllis, and then that really got me into the idea because they'll be there even if we move away and come back. Once they're on the ground, they're there. And this is, by the way, this is a new loquat. The other one made very delicious fruit, and I planted it out in the front yard. This is a small one that I'm now going to keep in a pot, dwarfed forever. Oh, and the yellow orchid flower did wonderfully. That big bunch of vine, so I can get a better picture. Green all the time, good yellow flowers, grows great. We'll probably take over if we ever leave. And the curry plant, which I didn't even try to protect, I just wrote it off, and it came back. I've been keeping it artificially short. Make it easy to cover. I don't need that many leaves, and everything else needs sun. Okay. The root beer plant I've been keeping artificially sparse. There's its baby. It's doing well. These are all those ferns I planted just before that huge freeze, and they're happy as can be. Or right before the hurricane. Anyway, here they are. Happy, doing really well. Yeah, right before the freeze. I got them because they froze back in the 32-degree freeze, and they'll do great. I'm also getting into hellebores, and a lot of these have now been in the ground for a full year. These look a little bitty, but they should explode and bloom. Some will bloom maybe this year and then next year. Bunches of crinums, another thing I'm getting into. These aren't rated for super cold though, so there is some chance they'll freeze back and go away. Chaya came back, of course. So this is that bed that was all brand new. There was only those 2 green cast iron plants, and I had put this all in right before the freeze, before the hurricane. And those tiny pepper plants, left to their own devices, do this, and this is with pruning, so that's not entirely left to its own devices. There's 5 feet of it. That's even taller than anything mentions it'll grow. Above it is a vine that's called purple hyacinth vine, and it hasn't bloomed, and it's in all different situations. And so I really think it's the heat here suppresses the bloom, and I won't be doing it next year. But if it survives the freeze and can get an early start, it might. There's a mulberry tree. The pawpaws have not done well, although two of them continue to live. But this one probably not. And mulberry tree will do well here, although this is the everberry mulberry, black mulberry, which is supposed to not do so well here, but the nursery said they do, and we'll see. And oh yeah, this is new. So the neighbor tore down all their trees, and we lost a lot of the cover, and so I put in this mimosa so that it can hide the skylight of their house, etc. Here's the blue bamboo. So this is the blue bamboo that's 1.5 years old. And it grew great, shade and all. So it got up into the sun. It's doing wonderfully, but not as wonderfully as the stuff in the front yard. And all of it makes a nice clump. You can see the monstera. It came back with a vengeance. The philodendron in front of it is new, actually. So we'll see how it does. And the they call it Mexican papyrus, but just yet another sedge. Doing really well. It's still in a pot's in the ground. Oh, if you see these irises typically want sun. These tolerate shade, but they're not blooming. The ones that I put at City Hall out in the sun bloomed. They also don't like a lot of water, but they're doing okay. I knew all this when I planted them. So, and there's the swing. Oh, looking a little sodden, but there's how it looks with the mosquito net on it. That was the impetus for doing this entire garden. This year I decided that one take didn't mean without pauses. So I'm back, and this is extra of that yellow orchid vine that I've just hung from a hook that was already there. I just think it's fun looking. This was bigger last year. These are alocasia, and the one where the dog is digging took a long time to come back, and that's how it's reviewed. And so I guess that's what it's going to do every year. These were all unprotected, and I left the unwanted little dwarf Cavendish unprotected and almost unirrigated. Not happy. Those are those two tiny leaves. The nice protected and coddled, these are clones, right? So this little banana and the big banana are clones of each other, but these are slips that are being produced by the bigger blue, they also call it ice cream banana. So it's doing fabulously, and I just wish it would throw up a stalk and make a banana. It's had almost enough time and made almost enough leaves, but it looks like I'm in for another year protecting it. Oh, this is sort of special. This is like usually only grown in the tropics. Golden showers, I think it's called. And I'll have to, anything in a pot will get cobbled. But not everything in a pot. Oh, so the roses seemed unhappy. So it meant, and I was right, that it was the perfect place for camellias. And they are really happy. They bloom. These were very cheap, discounted ones, and they've done great. And it looks like they're going to bloom again. But the roses bounced back, and so I have both. But now there really might be too much shade for the roses. This banana might be their death knell. And these were the kitten tails. They're related to those copper plants I showed before, and they still have some blooms because it hasn't really poured or hailed yet. This is fun. Oh, no, I took the bloom off. It makes a big stinky bloom. It's called a star plant, and it makes a big stinky star, and it bloomed just in time for my party on purpose. I mean, it was fun. This is super rare. This is one of the Aristoclea plants that makes huge, like they call pelican plants, make a very huge, weird, smelly flower. And one of mine did last year. And these are kind that you couldn't get anywhere in the U.S., but I was able to get seeds, and so I made about 8 of them, and then some showed up. I could have just bought one. But I have a bunch now. So they're not tolerant of, they're supposed to be tolerant of freeze maybe. I've got one in the ground, and the rest I'm going to protect. Ponytail palm, I put one in the ground. We'll see how it does this year. The other I'm keeping. Some things for the last part of the garden in the front yard. There's an arid bed. Moses in the cradle that I got some cuttings from, and on vacation actually, and I'm rooting them. Driving vacation, I can smuggle things back. And interestingly, a yellow dragon fruit, and they're delicious. The fruit are delicious, but this one hasn't made any yet. It's only this one. They're intermixed with some night blooming cereus, and the only bloom happened when we were on vacation. The moonflower didn't bloom at all this year because it was so hot so early and so dry, but now it's blooming beautifully, so there we go. Those are going to go in the front yard, those asparagus ferns. Okay. In the night, blooming jasmine did really well too. There's not much to see there. That's the thing in the white pot mixed with the Confederate jasmine. Yep, this giant thing froze back and bounced right back, but it did have lights protecting its base by the time we had the 18 degrees. Oh, Paul wanted a mimosa. This is the perfect mimosa. Came home in my car, like all the other plants, cost like $60, which is amazingly cheap, but I planted it myself. Okay. This poor silk floss tree it really suffered in the first freeze. I wrapped it for the second, but it still suffered, and it's bounced back each time, but I think that first one may rot down now. There is, okay, a really unusual bamboo. It only cleared customs 3 years ago, then it was auctioned, then it became available to the nursery trade last year, and I ordered it that year, and it's going to do well here. It's called a Buddha belly. Picture. There are other Buddha bellies, but what's unique about this one is it tolerates our conditions, should be freeze tolerant, and it always bellies even when it gets plenty of rain. The others you have to restrict them to get those bulges at the bottom of each cane. So it's going to look like a big messy string of beads back here. Its job is to replace the damn queen palms, which aren't really freeze hardy, although I managed to keep 2 alive and 1 died while I was trying to protect them last year. I didn't plant them, of course. My sensitive plant, which I think is so cool, even though they grow in lawns. When I saw the giant ones in the tropics, I got seeds and actually planted them. They would do a really good job. See, they've already been closed because the rain makes them close up. So they're, oh, my desensitized sensitive plants here at the moment. There it goes. Okay. And they do it even as babies. Even the single leaf will close. It's really cool. Okay, so those are Chinese fan palms, went through the freeze. There's my clematis. I was coming to the conclusion evergreen clematis just can't grow in Houston when suddenly we hit the right combination of circumstances and it grew like crazy this fall. Hasn't bloomed yet, but now I have hope. Maybe it will this spring. Here I went through a whole bunch of different kinds of plants. Nothing has quite worked. Sweetheart Hoya, which like they sell a single heart for $5 at Valentine's Day. This thing just exploded, and more of that very rare Giarna scandens. I've got it all over the place, but this is my reserve that will go in the garage. And a tree fern, which will be cold hardy enough. What it isn't is sun tolerant, and what it does do is get 10 feet tall. So eventually it will get as tall as the house, and then it will die because it will get so much sun it'll get blistered. And there's no way to cut them back really. So right now it's fine, and it's sitting on a pot, and so it'll get tall. It'll appear to get shorter and then taller and then be cut down if we're here long enough. So the overall thought, oh, super flowers. These are just the seed pods. These are balsam, so they're the species of impatient, but they are much more tolerant of heat. These pods explode when they're ripe, when they're touched. There goes one. And there are some flowers left on one I can show. Damned climbing rose that's never bloomed with me trying all different things. Wish I'd planted some other kind. Okay, so, and more amaryllis. Again, this is sort of my reserve pot, although they're everywhere. They're doing great. And also everywhere are cryons. So, and everywhere is this Brunfelsia. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow plant. I got it after the nursery experienced one of those, that very hard freeze. So I know it's that freeze hardy down to 18. And I split 1 pot or 2 pots into a bunch of separate plants. And they're doing well everywhere. They want to make big bushes, and I didn't really want big bushes. I want straggly plants, like more jungle-like. So I got my wish, but again, if we leave and nobody prunes it, they'll just take over. And this is that lantana I mentioned that came from the side of the road. And this I just pruned yesterday, and I wasn't planning to make this video, just take some stills. So I don't know, here's some more of it. This is a purple passion vine, incense type, and it went all the way over and hung down the gate and made purple flowers, but they'd stopped blooming already. And the edulis died back. This is the true maypop, so it should be able to cross-pollinate with the edulis, with the incense. And both of these will die back in the winter and come back in the summer, even up north. And this peak vitex grew and bloomed, and now it's up in the sky. And so now, unless it just somehow doesn't survive a freeze and gets frozen back to its base, it will get enough sun. And there's the leopard plant that was living in a pot and just really couldn't handle any sun. Partly because it was incredibly pot-bound. Now it's incredibly happy. This is the darkest, wettest corner. Other plants have indeed failed here, and this is just great. And this time I'm going to protect these ferns with lights and sheets if I'm home. And if not, these southern dwarf ferns are going to get moved up into these pots, and that will be the end of having sword ferns. Okay. These heliconia are not really hardy, and I had put them here during my party, but the City Hall gardener came and planted them all. This is actually City Hall property, but I landscaped it, and it looks like it's part of our yard, and so we're just very grateful for the way they did the fence. So this is the Pecoa that I was mentioning last year during Harvey that was sitting in water. It's perfectly happy. Turns out people that grow them commercially in Australia say, yeah, they tolerate dry soil, but they'd like to be watered. And what they don't really like is shade. And originally this fence was supposed to go along this straight line out to that beautiful, beautiful red rocket crepe myrtle that makes huge, wonderful red flowers. A little too much sun. So originally it would be here, and they would have gotten sun. Now they're under a tree. Nevertheless, one of them bloomed. I got to eat the blooms, which you're supposed to be able to do, and indeed they tasted good. And hopefully next year they'll bloom, and maybe we'll even get fruit. Even when you eat the bloom, it could still fruit. I just ate the petals off, but they're either too young or too shaded or both. They said I could prune back just a little bit more, and I might do that. So we'll see. But they grow fast, they're evergreen, they're non-poisonous, they're cold hardy, and hopefully eventually they'll bloom and fruit. And the ones in direct sun actually are unhappy here, and that was corroborated by this farmer that I read the notes of. There's the Thai giant alocasia and its little clone that's always in its shadow. And I've planted all kinds of amaryllids here. And one is called Catherine's Wheel, Haemophilus, the South African plant that made a big, beautiful star. That's those rounded oval leaves. And I've got lots of spider lily to pop up. A lemon tree making lemons. And I finally decided I moved that is not Duranta, that is a ligustrum, so it's way cold hardy, and I moved it from the other garden over here to fill in around the lemon tree. And I bought what I thought was going to be a lemon bottle brush, a yellow bottle brush to put on that wall, but wait till you see it. And this is the slim bottle brush. It would be slim, but I have too many liters. I mean, it's just how they made it at the nursery. And this winter I will prune it back so it'll be fewer main trunks. It's blooming. Nothing's blooming much because we've had so little sun, but and some gladiolas and some things called peacock orchids that I got for free that are doing really well. And this was gorgeous. This is a true deciduous, hardy hibiscus. So this will be here forever. It makes huge red flowers, but it's really going to drop its leaves completely, lose its stems, and grow back. And it even does that like in Michigan, so it should be fine. So this is the same kind of blue bamboo that you saw in the back corner, not the ones with the Buddha belly, but the big stand in the back. But this one is only a year old, but it got full sun. And so it's gorgeous. And as you see, it makes a clump. So once it gets to about 10 feet, the amount it changes every year is pretty imperceptible. So it's not hard to control, I hope. Okay. I'm really pleased. Theoretically, these are deciduous pinks, Sweet William, and I can't think of the scientific name at the moment. So we'll see. They may make it all the way through the winter and on into next year. They've made a good display. And the strawberry plants I was sent for free, they did make strawberries. And teacup alocasia that actually got too much sun, but I'm leaving it in place because I think it has a pleasant surprise next year as it finds itself covered in bamboo. And these blackberry lilies. So these are the ones I planted from seed. They did indeed grow into big plants. Second generation is starting to grow, and hopefully they'll get enough sun. They tolerate part sun. And one last time with the castor plant. Next year I probably won't put it there because I want these palms to grow. So what you see here is the European fan palm I bought just for this location. The little ones are still in the back in a pot, but they do have fans now. And a pygmy date palm that survived because of lights and all that special treatment. I'm going to let it go now. None of this is going to get special treatment next year. And I'm going to let the whole thing freeze back, and that palm behind it will take over. If we don't get a freeze, then it'll live another year or however long. Sunflowers, this is the third generation of them. So when they bloom, I plant more from a packet. And I also let morning glories grow up. At one point I had this huge thick pole of morning glories. It was really neat. Okay, so this is after I've taken out most of the zinnias. So these are the perennial amaryllids, meeting both the classic amaryllis and some of the little They call them surprise lilies or hurricane lilies or red spider lilies, and these were too young. Most of them were too young to produce flowers this year, but they will next year. And this, I will prune back this fig next year. We needed height. We had no trees, and now I can prune it properly like a fig. There's the old loquat, which I took the leader out of so it'll stay squat so we can pick them. One of the Asian, that's the Asian type hibiscus that was here. I did protect that through the winter because it was next to this crinum. This is a Queen Emma, and I had read it was hardy, bought it, paid a lot at a garden show for it. $60 for me is a lot, and then found out it maybe not. So I was very good about protecting it, but some year I won't, and we'll see how it does. So this whole bed went in March or February, March of this year. So we're looking at, I don't know, 8 months of growth. And including this cactus, which was just 3 petals high. So it's a thornless cactus. And these 3 palms, which I had actually bought before and kept in pots through the winter, but luckily had not put in the ground, so they're unmarred. And I just pruned them back a little bit hard so that things underneath them could get sun. So right here you're seeing kind of a hybrid garden right now of things that will just grow fast and some of the things that are permanent. It had a lot of okra in it. I've cut the okra way, way back, and I'll grow it next year just right along here. These also are supposed to be, these are variegated crinum. Again, they were supposed to be hardy. Now I'm reading some things that say they aren't. I will protect them, but you know, there's going to be, like we leave at Christmas. Some year there will be a freeze, and then we'll see what they really do. But hopefully they'll just lose their leaves and bounce back each year. But it's sort of unknown how they'll do if we ever hit 18 again without protection. But that's normally in January, and we're usually home by then from our winter vacation. Although if it's in February, we might be gone again. Okay, so not enough sun, but nice mix. Oh, that's copper plant, so that's related. They're not always copper colored. There were some green ones in the backyard, and it's related to those little pink fuzzy kitten tails you saw, and it actually produces cattails of its own. You can see they're not attractive ones. This one's grown through the leaves. See, I don't know if you can see it. Try again. Next year I probably won't let all this sweet potato plant grow. Underneath is creeping Jenny. I found a place where I went, and the dark version called chocolate chip. I would have to climb all the way down this trail. And this is incredibly cold hardy. I had some of this in the ground for the last freeze. I mean, it stays green after 18 degrees. So I want it to have the sun, but there was only a few, I mean, I had 3 tiny pots of it before. So now that it's spreading everywhere, I think next year that's going to be its job. And I will tone down the sweet potatoes. This stuff is that Uruguayan firecracker. I had some of it bloom. It really does make nice firecracker plant blooms, but most of it wants to grow quite high. I've been keeping plucked back again. We have not had enough sun, although here in the front yard this should be blazingly full sun. And indeed, part of the summer when it is sunny, this stuff just takes terrible heat and bothers some of these plants, and some of them love it. Oh, the motley looking things are Luna hibiscus. I found out they were hibiscus, northern hibiscus, extremely cold hardy, deciduous. They're dropping their leaves because of the day length, not the cold. And I thought they were very special. I raised them from seed, and then they hit the nurseries here for the first time. Like, I was right on trend, and so I could have bought them. I probably could have bought them cheaply when everybody overbought. But I grew them from seed, like 20 of them. There's some snapdragons planted from seed, and I forget what else. Honest to God, I forgot what else I put in there with them, but that's because this is a plant, a lime tree. It has to be brought in at about 40 degrees, so might as well grow some annuals with it. Okay, this beautiful mess. The palm from last year that was blown over in the video thrived. Everything else is still here that you saw before. And then I planted, these are really good. This is my second round, you know, where it flowered and fruited on its own of kumquats. And then this is the lemon bottle brush that when I found it online, the one place where you could buy it, pretty much 2 places in the US, and it was like 50 miles away. I went and they said, oh no, they're more expensive now, but they're like 8 feet tall. Now it's like more than 10 feet tall, and they're supposed to get to be 4 feet tall. So yeah, welcome to the world. It has made its yellow blossoms, so I know that it is one. And that is what happens if I still pruned, but if you don't really aggressively prune a hummingbird tree. This was a tiny thing. This thing was 4 feet tall or less. And it should die in the freeze, but I may protect it. I haven't decided. So These big leafed things, though, are more heliconia. Again, they really aren't freeze hardy, so they're going to live only as long as I protect them, although these are varieties that are rumored to come back from freezes zone 9, which is 20 degrees. So I know the risk. I knew the risk when I ordered them from Hawaii and planted them, and I'm going to try because the flowers are so cool. And because Paul happened to mention he liked them. And I trimmed the shell ginger way back and gave away a ton of it, or it would be all like this. The problem is it freezes back each winter, so it has to go 2 winters with almost no freeze in order to bloom. And I just didn't want to commit a lot of resources to doing that, and I had other places where I wanted it, and I gave away a lot. It's producing more. So when I get sick of heliconias, that shell ginger will take back over. Okay, last garden. This enormous thing is the agave that was in the pot last year, so it was waiting to explode as well. I now have permission to turn that into arid garden. That's next spring's project. This thing I love, it's called a guara plant. This is a little yellow blooming oleander. This is actually not a full sun garden. It gets full sun in the summer, but not in the winter. But we'll see. Hopefully that beautiful agave won't rot away. But it cost $10. Got it home in the car. Not that you could do that anymore. And double scoop, it's echinacea, but when they're a plant, I'm forgetting the name for a second, but and coneflower they call it. So, and some, it's a lily. It looks like an agave. It puts a false agave, and it puts up a red flower stem, and it did. And more pepper plants, and it looks like they'll make it here. And these are beauty berries, American beauty berries. They're truly deciduous. They're day-length deciduous, so they've dropped their leaves naturally. And sometimes you get purple berries that last all winter. These rotted because we had no rain for a month, and then we had a ton of rain, and we've had no sun. So c'est la vie, but they're happy, so they'll do fine. This is unirrigated. It turns out, I thought they were drought loving. They're not. They're just drought tolerant. So if I ever don't water them, they'll look terrible, but they'll come back. And that alcuba, I was just looking for a truly shady place, and it is, but not large. I'm going to zoom. I'll come over to it. So this poor thing, if it ever freezes, or if it freezes when we're not home, or if it really has a drought and we're not around, it really will die. But yeah, this is the trailing daisy that I was had a tiny patch of to try, and I carefully propagated it. And the rest of it before was that mix of jasmine and creeping fig. And I dug it out as the daisies Woodellea progressed. And they've now taken over beautifully, and they're just kept in check by the lawn guys. Okay, so that's the end of the tour, and I guess mostly for me, but wow, if you managed to stick through half an hour of this and have any questions, feel free to email me. I've got documents on all this so that I can remember what it is and what it needs. But basically, there's over 350 species now, and it can be allowed to just grow at will. The species mix would change, and there would no longer be 350 of them. But I do feel like this is a garden now that could withstand having a renter occupy the house for any number of years. So anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.